Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our virtual cultural exchange between Morocco and Gibraltar. This event is organized jointly by the Gibraltar Morocco Business Association and the Strait of Gibraltar Association, of which Mr. Brahim Krikas is president. I am Henry Sacramento, your host this evening. Today, we feature one of Gibraltar's most international personalities. Before I introduce her, let us see some footage of her activities and work so far. And we thank Mr. Abdelghani Koukous for the editing of that introductory video. Remind our viewers this evening that they will be able to put questions to our guest. And now to introduce her. She is an academic leader and policy expert in sustainable development who has acted as an advisor to national government agencies in Europe, Latin America, and Oceania, as well as traveled extensively in Africa and Asia to evaluate the investment and impact of programs in the area of sustainable development. She was a member of the board of the WWF Australia that brought Earth Hour to the world in 2007 and has been actively involved in its initiatives that inspire transitions towards sustainability. She has actively collaborated with the Mohammed VI Foundation for Environmental Protection, led by Her Royal Highness Princess Leila Hasna of Morocco. Before becoming Gibraltar's first Commissioner for Sustainable Development in 2018, she was the inaugural Vice Chancellor and CEO of the University of Gibraltar. Previously, she held leadership and research positions in Australia, UK, and Hong Kong. She was named by the European Commission as a Marie Curie International Fellow in 2011. Currently, she is the UK's government's representative on the UN Economic Commission for Europe, ESD. Since 1995, she has chaired several UN committees and was commissioned by the UNESCO to develop think pieces, expert reviews, and sector evaluations. She also advises the European Commission on the educational aspects of the Green Deal. Her recent efforts focus on climate futures informing action and training programs, as well as international meetings on climate change. She was an official delegate at the UN climate change conferences, including the one held in Marrakesh, COP22. Recent interventions saw her as the convener for the COP26 presidential event on education, November 2021, and as facilitator of key dialogues at the UN High-Level Political Forum in New York, July 2021. She was also keynote speaker at the World Environmental Education Conference held in Marrakesh 2013, hosted by King Mohammed VI. Her current Today for Tomorrow initiative is focused on embedding integrational rights in public policy. She works with young leaders for tomorrow through the Futures Forward Academy in Gibraltar, create a more sustainable future. She is an Honorary Fellow of the University of Cambridge, St. Catherine's College. Last year, she received a Doctor Honoris Causa from the University of Girona for her scientific and social contributions at a dedicated ceremony held at the university's 13th century claustro. Good evening and welcome, Professor Daniella Tilbury.
Good evening, Henry. It's an absolute pleasure to be here with you, my friend.
The pleasure is all mine, Daniella. Thank you for finding time in your extremely busy schedule to share this cultural exchange with us.
I'm just delighted to be able to support the association and this terrific work that bring our two communities together. It's fantastic. And thanks to Mohammed for organizing and Abdel Ghani for that terrific video.
Thank you. Daniella, my first question to you has to be, you were born in Gibraltar and did your schooling in Gibraltar. What was it like growing up in Varelbeg?
Yes, indeed. For 10 years, I lived in the gorgeous, glorious Varelbeg. And I say gorgeous because at the time it was surrounded by water. It had several children's parks and open spaces. But before Varelbeg, I'm actually from El Patio Policia. I'm actually from police barracks, which is where I was sort of born and grew up. And El Patio Policia now is quite gentrified into the arches, of course. But I was
because
very proud.
your late father was initially a police officer for a few years.
That's correct. Yes, he was in the army. He was also in the police force, but he was a very talented carpenter, and I was very proud of my upbringing, which is grounded myself in very humble beginnings from the very start. My parents married very young and wanted to make a life for themselves outside of the family unit. So they were very ambitious. And at one point, there was 4 of us living in a 1-bedroom, which was quite challenging. But they had visions and they had a life full of possibilities. The energy and the aspirations they had, was remarkable. And it sort of gave them a very positive outlook, which they passed on to me and which I'm trying to pass on to my daughter Alexa, explaining to her that, if you work very hard and you can imagine the possibilities, then they are attainable. But it was a close frontier, though. I grew up in a close frontier, and we used to go over to Morocco on the Monscalpe on short holiday breaks, to Alam Village in particular, like most Gibraltarians used to do at the time. And we had a very limited access to current affairs when the frontier was closed. And GBC did its best to keep us abreast of the news. But it was that close community that I grew up with, which I think influenced me a great deal. It not only gave me the hunger to travel, but it also, meant that I grew up in a very family-oriented, a very fun, a very unmaterialistic world, I think, that shaped my values in terms of sustainability, and also encouraged a lot of engagement, participation, being present, enjoying life. Something that I feel is missing today almost in our community. We used to hang around each other's houses and so on. But all of that, I think, has been quite influential.
When did you know what you wanted to do professionally?
That's a really good question. There's two sides to what I do. And with regards to the environment and sustainability aspects of my work, I can actually pinpoint the moment, the aha moment, when I realized that this is what exactly I wanted to dedicate my professional future to. And that goes back to 1988 in Australia.
Wow.
In Australia, I was actually on an undergraduate exchange trip. And while I was in Australia, I met this gentleman called Ian Rowbottom, who was a professor at Deakin University. He was teaching a particular module that was called environmental education. It was something that wasn't heard of very much. And after one of his classes, he asked if I could stay behind. And I was quite curious, what's he on about? And he asked me if I could take on a research project for him, which involved going to find out about young people's experiences of the environment, and to see what had influenced their experiences, how they could better engage to have a better life. So I visited schools, field centres, and did a lot of assessments, a lot of data collection, something I never thought I'd be doing. But actually, as I was doing it, I realized how much of a focus I had, how much of a smile I was having every day as I was studying around it, and my ability to work for many, many hours without checking the time, And it was at that point that I knew this is what I want to be doing for the rest of my life. I want to be helping people by helping them understand how things happen, how change can happen. So from there, within 12 months of doing that, I did an undergraduate thesis, which earned me a scholarship into Cambridge. I moved to Cambridge, and 12 months later, I was in a very different world, which I very much enjoyed. But the other aspect of the work I do is related to where my heart is, and my heart is education. It has been from a very, very young age. So I care about the environment, I care about the future, and I want to help societies move to a better future. But I think education is the most important aspect of that, because I think we cannot transition to something different if we don't understand or question our values. And education does that, And I was very little. I remember sitting in the back of classes at now Westside School, but it used to be at the John Mackintosh Hall, many, many years back, and sitting at the back of classes. And instead of listening to what was being taught, I remember just sitting there and looking at how it was being taught, and asking questions about the how and what we were gaining and what we were taking away, rather than the content, And I had a real passion for the how, the ability to engage people in a creative way, to explore them within the process of education, rather than just learn facts, knowledge, And that is also something that I've been really, really interested in. And Cambridge allowed me to bring those two passions together.
How was your time at Cambridge? And I ask this because it's very much a macho environment. Being a woman in Cambridge, how was that experience?
It was actually very positive. It was very, very positive. I think I didn't once experience any sexism at all there. And there was a lot of opportunities to question things that I thought were very deeply held. And it allowed me to just check on my contradictions, things that I thought to be true and very important. And then I met other people, and through conversations, through meeting, understanding the lives of others, I began to question a lot of things about who I was, where I came from, what I believed in. And it was really transformative for me. I mean, I'm still very connected to Cambridge because it's hard for me to let go. It was such a positive experience for me that I still work very closely with them.
Daniella, you travel extensively because of your professional commitments, and you have also lived away from Gibraltar. What brought you back to Gibraltar?
As I say, I grew up in Gibraltar when the frontier was closed, and it was sort of severed from the rest of the world. And over the years, I had the fantastic opportunity to travel quite a bit between Africa, Latin America, a lot in Asia, where I lived for 12 years. And I very much connected with the places that I went to. I learned different languages, but I'd understood the importance of family, I think, as I was away. I learned a little bit about ambition of a community. I learned a great deal about humility. I understood the importance of putting all your energies to things that you really want to change, and also the importance of doing things differently, not just fitting in a community and accepting what is, but questioning and challenging what's going on. I think that's something that I learned during my travels, and I really enjoyed every bit of it. As I say, I was in Australia, I was in Asia, Africa, Madagascar. I spent time in Venezuela, Argentina, and then I spent 10 years as well in Oceania, in Australia and New Zealand. I really enjoyed that, but at the end of the day, the minute my daughter was born, I realized the importance of her growing up within a family unit where my parents could enjoy her, she could connect with her cousins, her auntie, that was all important. So although career was very important to me and I very much enjoyed and felt a commitment to making a difference, I also realized that it was important to come back home for that. So my husband, who was incredibly patient with me, when I woke up one morning, I said to him, I think I want to move back closer to home. We were in Australia. My daughter was less than a year old. And I said to him, I think I want to move back. And he very sprightly said, yeah, that sounds good to me. So we made a very, very quick decision. And within a week, I managed to find a similar role to the one I was performing in Australia, in UK. And we left Australia within the week of that conversation and moved to the UK, which was closer to home. And then eventually, when the University of Gibraltar was being set up, I was asked to assist in its development, and I ended up in Gibraltar. So it's important. Gibraltar is very important to me, and family is very important to me.
We have our president, Mr. Brahim Krikas, that says, on behalf of the Strait of Gibraltar Association executives and members, we are grateful to our dear guest, Daniella Tilbury, to take out some time to join us at this great event tonight. There is much to learn from a long, brilliant and inspiring woman. Thank you very much, Brahim, for that lovely comment. And we also have Gibraltar Morocco Business Association that says, we extend our cheerful welcome to our dear guest, Daniella Tilbury. We are all excited tonight to learn about interesting experience and personality. Thank you very much. Oh, and we have Sonia Goltz, all the way from Gibraltar, asking, extremely proud of this woman's incredible achievements and how she has put Gibraltar on the map, feeling proud. Thank you very much, Sonia, for your lovely comment. Daniella, you chose Cancun
very kind words.
You chose Cancun to actually tie the knot with your husband. Why Cancun?
It's quite simple, actually. We're both Roman Catholics, and faith was important to both of us. And so we were looking for somewhere where we could have a religious wedding. And we also had families in Australia and families in Gibraltar. So we looked at the map of the world and we thought, where could we find somewhere which was equidistant between Gibraltar and Australia, that also allowed us to realize our dream of having a romantic religious wedding. And Mexico seemed to provide, or at least in principle, the ideal situation for us to tie the knot together.
And what a lovely wedding it was. And I know because both Priscilla and myself attended. Lovely memories of it. And we now have Stephen Marine saying, welcome, Daniella, and thanks for all your support you have given us from the beginning. Viewers need to know that you actually supported me to achieve the vision to the setting up of our office in Tangier, both Gibraltar Morocco Business Exchange and the Straits of Gibraltar Association is thanks to you. Wow. Thank you, Stephen.
Very kind, Stephen. Thank you. And you've done fantastically well to establish the office.
Daniella, who has been the person that has influenced you the most?
Another great question. I would say my parents, both my mum and my dad in different ways. I think role models are always close to home. Dad was very, very hardworking. He was a very innovative problem solver. Nothing was ever too hard. His mind was just remarkable like that. There was no problem too difficult. He was known for tackling those issues that some people perceived to be unsolvable. He had just that ability to turn things around. And my mum, who recently passed away, who was a very resilient woman. I mean, she fought through life with many challenges, not just for being a very smart woman at a time when women were to be seen and not heard, but also because she wrestled with a lot of social and health challenges during her time. But they both had very positive energy and a real thirst for life. And I think that's really influenced me because we've seen those beautiful pictures at the start of today, and you read that kindly, that very, very long bio, which I thought you'd shorten.
Oh no, I just couldn't leave anything out. Your mother wouldn't have forgiven me.
That's true. But the reality is that there's a lots of ups and downs in a career. You know, it's not linear, or it's not sort of perpendicular. It tends to be ups and downs, and you need to be very resilient and very clear with what you want to do and what impact you want to have in this world. And I think those things about being resilient and being hardworking and clear, I think that comes from my parents. But I have to say as well, my daughter really does inspire me. She's a very old soul and has a way of perceiving and engaging with the world, which is really quite humbling. And it's that way in which she carries herself is something that I'm learning a great deal of.
Daniella, earlier on this week, I caught up with one of your parents' best friends, and this is what she had to say about you.
Oh, goodness.
Mohammed, if you can play us the little video. There we go.
Daniella, looking forward to the program, to the interview with you. I've known you since you were a very little girl, because I was best friends with your parents, of course. And you've always come across as a very intelligent girl, that you put your heart and soul into everything you used to do as a young girl. Of course, as you grew older and obviously you became a woman, a young woman, you have excelled in everything you've done. You've made a wonderful name for Gibraltar, thanks to you. You've been an ambassador to Gibraltar, actually. And I think we owe you a lot. Perhaps not enough credit is given to you, because you are a very important person in Gibraltar, and you've made Gibraltar proud. You continue to make Gibraltar proud, and you make all of us proud, especially your parents, mom and dad, have always been very proud of you. So I wish you all the luck in the world. I'm very happy that you married Kim, that you have a beautiful daughter. Everything is going fine for you because obviously you deserve it. And I wish you every success and every happiness in the future. Always. We love you very much. God bless.
So kind, Anna Maria.
Thank you very much, Anna Maria. And my next question to you has to be your most embarrassing moment. And this one doesn't count. Eh?
Well, actually, it's a double whammy, that question, because I remember it very, very precisely. It was 2007. It was the 31st of March. I think it was 31st of March 2007. I remember the day, and it was exactly 7:30 in the evening, and I was actually in the shores of Sydney Harbour, waiting for the lights of Sydney to switch off, because I was part of the group that came up with the Earth Hour idea. And we'd been working quite hard to pull together this latest initiative, which was all about raising awareness about the importance of minimizing consumption and the impact that you can have through questioning your lifestyle choices and the way you use energy and the way you travel and so on. And this was a very important campaign for us in 2007. We were working to raise awareness in Australia, particularly, that's where we were as part of WWF Australia. I was a member of the board there, and this is the work we decided to work on. So there we were. We'd gathered all the politicians. The Prime Minister was there, the Cabinet was there, a lot of Australian celebrities were there. Hollywood A-listers were there. We had a lot of people that were important in the media, and we were counting down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, switch off, and the lights didn't go off. And we were going, oh goodness, what do we do now? So I remember turning around to Kevin Rudd, who was, 2 months later became the Prime Minister of Australia, actually. I remember turning around to him and trying to sort of gently steer the conversation to how much we need to still raise awareness about these issues. And this proves that, we need to raise awareness, trying to sort of get a positive outcome out of it all. And about 15, 20 minutes later, we all looked up, and actually you could see a very visible difference between the lights before and the lights after. But in that moment, it was incredibly embarrassing. And it just sort of taught me that, people change in their own time and not when you ask them to. Yeah. They take time to digest, to understand, to respond. And, it was important at the time to take that lesson and learn how we proceed going forward. And in fact, now, of course, Earth Hour is a global movement. We not only switch off Sydney Harbour, but the Eiffel Tower, the Moorish Castle. It's one of those momentous Earth year days in the Earth year, where we celebrate everything to do with life and positivity, really.
I remember the very first one in Gibraltar, which was held in Ocean Village. I still have the T-shirts that were printed for the occasion.
What year was that, Henry? Do you remember?
I was trying to think, and I cannot pin it down, but I remember going along with Priscilla. Janet Hewitt was very much involved, and Tommy Scott, and I can't remember. Honest to God, I can't remember. But it was the very first one, and then obviously it's, as you say, now the Moorish Castle gets switched off, and there's so much awareness being created now that every year Priscilla and I have a candlelit dinner on the occasion.
Yes, and it's remarkable how it's grown from being just an idea where 6 of us got together and started planning it, to seeing it just take a life of its own. It now has a team that's based in Singapore that brings all the coordinates all the activities across the world. And it has a massive impact. They're calculating the difference the switch off for an hour does make in a community, and they're communicating that out. So people are learning about the impact they can make through just a simple action of switching off lights for an hour.
We have Nadine from Tangier that says, thank you guys for this cultural bridge between Morocco and Gibraltar. My question to the professor, what is the goal of sustainable development? Is sustainable development necessary? Why is sustainable development so often associated with the protecting the environment? Does sustainable development apply to all spheres of activity? Quite a number of questions there.
Yes, I'll try and combine them if that's okay.
Yep.
I'll try and do that through an anecdote. One of my travels, I was working for the Worldwide Fund for Nature, WWF, the one with the panda, and I'd been asked to travel to Africa, and I spent time in Madagascar, Tanzania, particularly, but also Botswana and South Africa. And when I was there, I was sent with a remit to assess how monies that were supposed to be relevant to, monies that were supposed to make a difference with regards to environmental impact, whether they were being successful or not, and whether there needed to be a change of strategy or spending the money in a different way. So I would go to the projects on the ground and speak to all the stakeholders, you know, anybody who was benefiting from the money that was being invested. And I got to Uzunga National Park in Tanzania, which is northern Tanzania. It's near the Kilimanjaro area. And I spoke to locals, and I was there, of course, to see that the national parks in that part of the world were being protected, and that the nature reserves and the animals were being protected. The biodiversity was being preserved. That's what the money was for. And you get there and you realize that the local environmentalists were putting up fences around the national park so people couldn't access them, to protect the wildlife from the communities. That's how they saw it. But the reality was that the communities have been living with the wildlife in the national park for many, many years in a sustainable way. And by putting these fences up to protect the environment, they were increasing poverty because they had no way of accessing their food sources.
Wow.
So the local communities were really significantly impacted by what's supposed to be, good intentions by the environmentalists. And they were, people were literally dying from not being able to access food, not being able to earn a living from the food as well. And so for me, that's where sustainable development comes in. It made me realize that you just cannot change the world for a positive way to preserve the environment, to improve the environment, if you don't then link it to well-being, health and well-being, but also to the lifestyles and the poverty agenda, which was so critical in certain countries. So just doing a divide and say, no, I'm an environmentalist and you're doing aid work. No, we have to work together to resolve the world's greatest issues. And the Sustainable Development Goals, the 17 of them that were released by the United Nations some years back, is an attempt to try and have a more integrated approach so that we preserve the environment, we protect wildlife, but we also find ways in which communities can improve and can have access to not just food and water, but also to energy sources. Because in Madagascar, I found a very similar situation. I went to the very southern part of Madagascar, and you saw some photos of that in the slideshow previously, where I spoke to a very young mother. She must have been in her early 20s. And she spoke to me about the fact that she had lots of fish around her because it was a fishing village and she could access food, but she didn't have the means to actually cook the food. Because again, the conservationists had been taking the coal away because coal was quite polluting, and she used the local stones and the coal to cook the food. And so we had to find an alternative for that community that enabled her and others in her village to actually cook the food to feed the community, which was readily available, but doing it in a way that didn't harm the local environment, which of course was also for their own benefit. So for me, this poverty, development, environment issues are very integral, and it's very, very difficult to separate them.
Thank you for that excellent explanation, Daniella. Daniella, you mentioned how important family is for you. This is what your sister Nicole has to say about you.
Oh, no.
Bueno, what can I say about you, Daniela? Desde chiquitita, siempre era, you were the brightest one. You were the brightest of the school. You were the smartest one of the whole family. You always impressed everyone everywhere you went. You were a very good student. Everybody compared me to you. All the teachers said que you were the best one. Que ay, esta niña que buena, eh? And I was quite the opposite. So I always really got told off by mom and dad. I could not be compared to you at all. I was quite the opposite. You left Gib at a very, very early age when people didn't travel or go to unis, and not many people left. You traveled to many places around the world, which places I never knew existed. And you were 1 week here, 1 week there. Nunca sabía dónde estábamos. Those days we didn't have the phones and the technology that we have now. Con que I know that we had to wait till you get to a phone booth and call. And mom used to be a little bit upset that perhaps you didn't call that day. Pero sí, you've been in the universities, you've been vice chancellors to very big universities around the world también. And we have always been very proud of you. Mom and dad were always very proud of you, of all your achievements everywhere they went, whether they went on holiday, wherever they went, they would speak about you, tell everybody what you were doing, where you were going. And they were always, always very proud of you. What can I say at the moment is that I'm happy that you've come back to Gib with your husband and your daughter. We haven't had this last year hasn't been a good one, once again, but we'll deal with it as we've dealt with the others. And I'm happy that you've made Gibraltar your home and you're staying here in Gib once again.
Thank you, Nicole.
I'm so sorry, Nicole, that you got compared.
Bless her. I have to say, Daniella, that in order to get your sister to do that video, I had to wait for her to come back from holiday and actually go to the hairdresser. And it reminded me very much about Mum and how important it was for her to go to the hairdresser before going anywhere important.
Yes,
and,
I mean, and I have to say, she says she gets compared to me. I get compared to her. She's so friendly and accessible and always so kind to people, you know, and she's a real role model for her kids, for my daughter too. So I very much look up to her too, even though she doesn't realize that.
We have Sonia Gold that says, I hear you say that education is very much your cup of tea. Have you ever considered entering politics in Gibraltar? Minister for Education, maybe? We need women of your caliber. What do you say? Wow.
Oh, goodness. I have to say, I have a very deep commitment to change, and I believe that change is very, very important in our community, and that we must look at ways in which we can improve as a community over time, because I think not just Gibraltar, but all communities need to have a vision of the future that's positive, that's something you get excited about, that you look forward to, that you can all play a part in imagining what something like 2030, 2035 is going to be like, and actively contribute to getting to that destination together as a community. So all of that makes me very interested in politics, and I follow politics quite closely. Whether I'd be a politician or not, I'm not sure. I'm not sure I have the I could never be a career politician. I speak my mind far too often, I think, and that doesn't always get. I also think that our politicians work very hard and don't always get the respect they deserve. I mean, that's something else. I feel that politicians, dedicate their lives to trying to make a positive difference in communities, and we're sometimes very quick to criticize and very quick to, and maybe they themselves are used to it, but maybe the families of politicians find that quite hard to digest. So it's not an easy life choice, I think, for those who are brave enough to take on the challenge. So there's two sides to this. I'm very interested in politics and I follow closely, but I'm not entirely sure that I would be ready for politics.
Thank you for that answer, Daniela. And we have Reda from Rabat says, Moroccans are geographically very near to Gibraltar, overseas territory, but unfortunately still so much misunderstanding and negative stereotypes in both sides about each other's. I applaud the hard work the Gibraltar Morocco Business Association with the Straits of Gibraltar Association doing to eliminate those obstacles. Professor, what do you think and advise to do to continue building this bridge of memorandum of understanding?
Gosh, I think you're absolutely right. I think stereotypes at both ends still exist, and this is why the association is such an important vehicle for not just linking us together and having conversations that challenge those stereotypes, but also for creating a pathway for achieving things together, which I think is really, really important. And I very much always enjoy my visits to Morocco. I do go quite often professionally, and I very much enjoy learning about the culture, learning about recent developments and how quickly things are changing in Morocco. With regards to what we can do, I think having more conversations is the beginning of challenging, as I say, those stereotypes and those assumptions. I think that's important. I think regular communication and exchange visits would work really well. I also think that sport can be a good means by which we challenge those stereotypes. There's different mechanisms in which, not just academically and through conversations, but through playing together, through challenging each other through sports, I think you break down other types of barriers and you make connections that are individual and team wise that could also offer possibilities for the future.
Thank you very much. We recently had a team of Taekwondo from Gibraltar come to Tangier for a weekend, and they had an exchange with as far as Taekwondo is concerned. We have Lubna from Fez that says, Professor, how do you become a fellow at Trinity College, Cambridge?
Becoming a fellow is something that is difficult in the sense that the university chooses you rather than you choose the university. And so it's not necessarily about a lot of hard work or about your grades academically. It's very much about the reach and sphere of influence that you can have. So if they recognize that you can have a sphere of influence, they then would like to associate themselves with the work that you're doing, and they're very supportive. And they also would like students and partners of the college to have exchanges, to learn from that sphere of influence, and to extend, I think, some core missions of the university. So it's a little challenging, but quite a rewarding experience.
And may I ask, once you're a fellow, are you a fellow for life, or does it have an expiry date?
My particular category is Fellow for Life. There are different categories. There's 4 different categories of fellowship. Mine's the Honorary Fellow, which means that I am a Fellow for Life now.
Thank you very much for that answer. Mohammed, do we have any more questions from our guests? Yep, there we go. Ali from Tangier says, "Dear guest, tell us about your trip experience in Morocco."
I've had some very positive experiences. I have, of course, visited Henry and Priscilla and Henpress in Morocco with my mother, actually, shortly after my father deceased, and that was a very enjoyable holiday. And
the famous coffee table.
It was a famous coffee table. Very much enjoyed the food, their company, them showing us around Tangier. My experiences through work have mainly been in Casablanca, Marrakesh, in particular, Rabat as well. I've worked with the universities in Rabat. I've worked in Casablanca as well with some of the NGOs. And in Marrakesh, we've done various work with the foundations that are looking to improve the environment there. And I've very much enjoyed my time in Morocco. You just make so many personal links every time you go. You know, when I look through my phone, I have so many friends that I make at every trip, and so many positive connections. So not only am I learning a lot more about the culture, but I'm also making friends for life each time I go. So in fact, about last weekend, my husband was already saying, when's our next trip? Because my husband tends to accompany me every time I go. He was saying, when's your next professional trip to Morocco? I think we're in time. You know, it's time for us to start planning the next trip. So you might see me around very shortly.
Good, good. Tell us how the COP22 conference in Marrakesh was.
Yeah, it was really interesting, exceptionally well organized, and we learned so much about the investment that Morocco is making in terms of creating new communities for sustainability, not just investment in new technologies and power generation, or the carving of new forests, because there's been a lot of tree planting as well, to ensure that Morocco does get the not just the energy, but the protection, the climate protection that it needs going forward. It's quite visionary, I think. Morocco is looking very much ahead with regards to sustainability, and understands, I think, the connections between social, economic, and environmental aspects of this agenda. You know, there's a business aspect to this. Only this morning, I was talking to a local bank about the importance of making environmental initiatives and environmental investments sustainably economically as well, because we all benefit from investing in green power, for example, you know, investing in new ways of transporting us to different destinations, you know, the investment on trains, which has been so important in Morocco as well, getting from one place to another, not just connecting people, but also cutting down on carbon emissions. There's a variety of ways in which Morocco has tackled the sustainability agenda and continues to do so. It's a very long journey for all of us, not just for Morocco and other countries in Africa, but for all of us. We are very far away from where we need to be yet. And it's a journey that we need to take step at a time and move forward. But yes, it was a very positive experience. Again, the food was terrific, and the hospitality. I remember just getting off the plane and being hosted all the way through. There wasn't a minute where I had to ask for anything. I was so well looked after, literally, for even, you know, through going through customs, taken to the hotel. Every need was met. So the hospitality, I've never seen anything like it anywhere else. And very kind and generous communities.
I always say that the word hospitality was invented in Morocco. Yeah. We have our president again, Brahim Krikat, saying, "I'm sure Professor Daniella is aware of Noor Power plant in Morocco, which is the world's largest concentrated solar power plant project, situated in the municipality of Ouarzazate in the Agadir district of Morocco. The Noor plants are located in a very favorable region with one of the highest amounts of sunlight in the world.
Yes.
My question to our professor, how much the world is in need of this green energy instead of other traditional systems?
Oh, absolutely. And I think Morocco is leading the way. Not only is it leading the way, but it's also selling its energy to other countries, which is, just goes back to the point I was making about there is an economic value to investing in green and sustainable ways forward, whether it be energy, transport, or other means. There is an economic value. People can benefit personally. Communities can benefit. Not just because you have a cleaner environment, because you are tackling climate change and you're looking for the future which is much safer, but also because it's better for the purse. I really do think that there are global emerging markets where green energy is the way forward. Everybody is shifting. At the moment, we have an energy crisis because of the Ukraine war. And because we don't have the systems in place, because we don't have the availability to the green technologies, which is something we should have been invested in 20 years ago, countries like Germany are having to take 10 steps back and having to revert to coal again, something which was unthinkable 12 months ago. So investment in technology, investment in green alternatives needs to happen strongly now to cushion us, not just from climate change, but from the economic bumps that will come our way in the next 12 months if we're not ready for the shift. It's a very good question. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Daniella, you were mentioning your husband, Kim, asking you when your next holiday was. I caught up with Kim, and this is what he had to say about you.
Has not only been a leader within her professional sphere, she has also been an inspirational mother, wife, and role model. She is respected internationally for her leadership and strategy skills. She has an impressive work ethic and has the ability to engage with all people. I've seen her engage and bring together desperate groups towards a common purpose and goal. I've asked her to do this on several occasions within my own sector, where she's brought together lots of different sport groups and achieved an outcome for a common good. Her ability to juggle her work-life balance amazes me. She has the ability to manage a myriad of spinning plates within her professional life while still prioritizing her family. I couldn't want for a better role model for my daughter.
Oh.
Thank you, Kim. And you have no idea the difficulties he had in order to do this without you finding out.
I'm getting quite emotional. It feels like I'm about to retire or something.
Oh gosh, no. No, I just wanted to make this interesting and different, no? And because I've known you since you were a little girl, I dared do all this and surprise you, with Anna Maria being your parents' best friend, and then your sister Nicole, and of course Kim. I'm not sure whether we have any more questions from our guests. Mohammed, do we have any more questions from our guests? Yes, we have. And Alex from Gibraltar says, big thanks to the Strait of Gibraltar Association for doing this very needed culture exchange, and all the best in the future. My question to the guests is, what are the requirements and qualifications to become a member of UNECE? Tell us about your personal experience and how your membership started. I think they mean started.
Yes, of course. So the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe, which is based in Geneva, is a UN entity. It's the United Nations, which looks after aspects not just of Europe, even though it says Europe, but also North America and Canada. It's like a partnership, which is looking at economic ways in which to tackle some partnerships. So your question's about membership. So because it's a UN agency, only governments are represented in the United Nations. And so that means that there isn't any community, organizational or individual membership. So my involvement with the UN is because the UK government asked me to represent them in Geneva in this particular platform that looks after environmental sustainability and education issues. It's quite a unique platform, and yeah, it's representation. So your government needs to nominate, go through a clearance process, and then recommend appointment to the United Nations itself, who will then do their own clearances before becoming a member. So it's a complex one. When I moved from the UK to Gibraltar, I resigned from that role. So I thought it was not appropriate for me to be in Gibraltar and representing the UK government. So I did it for a number of years, and then I resigned. You get appointed directly by the Minister for the Environment in your particular country. And I sent it in. I moved to Gibraltar, and 2 years or 2.5 years after I moved to Gibraltar, the UK government hadn't selected anybody else, and the United Nations reached out to me and said, would you mind picking it up again and being the UK government representative? And I remember saying, well, it's just not up to me. That's just not my role. So I put them both in touch, and 6 months later, they said, yes, this can happen. Of course, it was a very different government, a different minister by that point. Things had changed a lot in the UK. But yes, they reappointed me, and so I have the privilege to continue on that role until they asked me to.
Fantastic. Thank you for that answer. Not sure if Mohammed has any more questions. I have. Oh, yes. Yes. Oh, Ana Maria Morro. Thank you, Ana Maria. Feeling humbled and honored to have been asked by Henry to say a few words about you. I must say, I found that adjectives failed me when it came to describe you. I was kept up to date with all your achievements by your mum, of course, but listening to Henry's fantastic biography of you, I am still in awe of how much valuable work you have done, are doing, and have yet to do. As always, Henry is an accomplished presenter, and his interviews keeps us interested in whichever topic is being discussed. Oh, thank you very much, Ana Maria. Now I'm getting emotional.
It is true, though, Henry. Your ability to have conversations is just outstanding.
Well, I've always been a people's person. Even when I used to walk the beat, I just had to talk to everybody. Communication, I think, is so essential, especially nowadays when so much is taken for granted with social media. But having a normal conversation from the everyday person in the street happens very rarely.
Yes.
And it's something that comes very naturally to me.
Yes, and I think the younger generation are losing that ability, actually, to converse in a meaningful way. I think that every time they exchange things is for a purpose, to get something, to do something, rather than to talk, to have
just because, yes,
exchange, So it's changing the way people relate to each other, technology, unfortunately.
And yet, on the other hand, something like technology, as you know, because you're part of my Good Morning Club, the being able to say good morning to friends all over the world, and you always comment on my smile and Priscilla's smile. That without technology would not be able to happen.
True. Yes, it also connects us, doesn't it, in a different way? Yeah.
I suppose it's like everything. It's how you use what you're given. It can be used in a positive way or not so positive way. I have one final question for you, unless Mohammed has any more waiting to be posted. And that is the human race. Are we doing enough to make a difference, Daniela?
We're doing enough, but not necessarily the right thing. There is an obsession with certain environmental behaviors, I would call them, which sometimes don't make sense. There's also a lot of greenwashing. So you go to the supermarket and you buy products thinking that they are making a difference, that they're green, and they're not. And you have to read beyond the label. You have to ask questions more deeply to make sure that our energies, our efforts are dedicated to something that can have impact. So sometimes you have a choice between two things, and they both sort of seem to be on the superficial level to be similar, but actually one could make such a big difference as against to the other. And that requires standing back and thinking a little bit more about it, maybe doing some questioning, maybe reading a little bit, maybe going online, especially if you're making a big investment like a car, looking at alternatives to purchasing a car and using sustainable transport. Things like, when I do the traveling now, my first option is saying, can a train get me there? And if a train can get me there, I will go there by train. And that's really important. As I say, before I travel, I now say, can I connect online? Is that connection online going to be delivering on what we need to deliver? Because then I won't travel either. So it's about not making superficial changes, but doing something a lot more substantial. I mean, there's a gentleman from the States who constantly reminds me of the tensions in this agenda. He talks about you cannot put a tree in the butcher shop and then pretend that you're turning vegetarian, because the core nature of the butcher shop is that you sell meat. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with selling meat, but you need to be transparent about where the meat is sourced, the animal welfare issues, how far the meat has come from. It doesn't mean you have to stop your business, but you have to rethink your business. And it's not about just putting more trees in the shop front to make it look greener. It requires more profound changes, sometimes not so visible, but you can make them visible by alerting your clients, your customers about those changes, and talking to your friends about something you found that was interesting, that meets that particular need, but it's also a green alternative. It's very much about coming together as a community and not just ticking boxes and saying, well, I do this, I do that, I do that. So it's not as if we have to necessarily upscale what we do, but we need to think about what we do so that we're making clever choices, so that, we can aspire to a much better future, not just for us and every day, because, climate change is starting to affect us, not just here on the Rock, but in the region. We're getting a lot more rain, we're getting a lot more wind, we're getting climate events more frequently, and we're going to be seeing more and more of that. So we will all benefit from making those clever choices and those sensible investments going forward.
Thank you very much, Daniela. And I have one final video to show you, because I also caught up with your daughter, Alexa.
Right.
Having Daniella Tilbury as my mother is one of the best things that could have possibly happened to me. Not only is she loving, caring, and thoughtful, but she also possesses important characteristics such as honesty and trust, which are essential to maintain a healthy mother-daughter relationship. Throughout my life, she has provided vital life lessons, as well as helping me create my own strong opinions to assist on guiding me through society, thus helping create the person I am today. I am extremely appreciative to have her help me through everything, especially this past year, as she helped me power through my GCSEs. Even when I hit rock bottom, she managed to help me up and continued to help me through it, even when I believed I couldn't, and I am eternally grateful for her support. I seriously could not have done it without her. Something not many people know about her is the fact that she always puts in 100% effort into what she does, regardless of the size of the task or the due date. She won't focus on anything else until her job is done, and there will never be an absence of detail that goes into her work, and I find that really admirable. There is a running joke that my dad and I have with her, which is due to the fact that she never stops working and has never fully experienced the idea of relaxing and truly taking a break from working. For example, we could be watching a movie on the sofa and my mom would still be writing emails for work. I really hope that one day she would be able to take the break she truly deserves. One of my motivations in life is to try and become at least half the amazing woman she is. She is a role model, not only for me, but for many others internationally. And luckily, I am able to call her my mother.
Thank you very much, Alexa. What a beautiful young lady she has turned out to be, Daniela, and I am not surprised with such wonderful role models as yourself, as mum, and Kim as her dad. I am so privileged to have been to your wedding, to have assisted her christening. Where have the years gone?
Yes, I'm getting very emotional now. That was just the icing on the cake. It's relationships and friendships and family that make a life worth living, I think.
Oh, we have Kevin Salsa here saying, thank you, Professor, for furthering our knowledge by providing us with all this very interesting information. And I'm very moved by all the work you have done. Y cuando quiera te hago un tajín con tu hermana Nicole, donde queráis. Pues there you go. There's
Yeah,
Kevin Salsa offering to make you and Nicole a tajín.
Very nice.
See, and incidentally, Kevin is now importing 1704 wine made in Morocco, which would, I'm sure, go very well to accompany those tagines.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Daniela, what an absolute pleasure and privilege it has been for me to have you on our cultural exchange. Thank you very much. Shokran bezef. And I hope we catch up in Gibraltar or here in Morocco the next time we're over.
Thank you, Henry. I wasn't expecting this to be so enjoyable. I really enjoyed it and very humbled by it all, also very emotional by the kind words from everybody. Thank you for putting so much effort into this, and Abdul Ghani and, of course, Mohammed, for all the work that goes on behind the scenes to make this all possible. I really appreciate this, and if there's anything I can ever do to support the association and its goals, please do count on me.
Thank you. We really appreciate it, Daniela. Thank you, Daniela. And thank you all for having joined us here in our culture. Oh, we have another question. You can watch the recording of this live video on our Facebook page and later on YouTube channel, Strait of Gibraltar Association. There you go.
Thank you.
As I was saying, thank you very much for all of you having joined us in our cultural exchange. It has been, as I said, a pleasure to host you tonight, live from the Casbah in Tangier, bringing our cultures closer together. Good night. God bless.